In this video, we're going to start creating your prototype level. I'm going to talk a little bit about the game design of that, and then I'm going to show you my sketch, and we're going to work through a sketch together. Now, before we jump in, I want to show you this fantastic book. I know a lot of you ask from time to time, hey, Rick, what's some game design book? Let me just get it so it's not glary. What do you recommend for game design? There we go. The Art of Game Design by Jesse Schell. Fantastic book. A lot of what I love about it is that he's talking about the intention, the experience, the underlying principles. And it's not just about the mechanics of it, but he's trying to get across that there's an art to it of being a game designer. I love it a lot. And one thing I wanted to show you guys, that this is the entirety in this book that's all about design. Can you see this here? This is the entire part. Sorry about the blurriness. This is the entire part about level design. That's it. That's the entirety. But I want to be a level designer. Well, that's all he talks about. But let me just read you a little excerpt from this. So it's like a poetry reading here. All a level designer does is arrange the architecture, props, and challenges in a game in ways that are fun and interesting. That is, making sure that there is the right level of challenge, the right amount of reward, the right amount of meaningful choice, and all other things that make a good game. Level design is just like game design exercised in detail, and it isn't easy for the devils in the details. Level design is different for every game. This is interesting because every game is different. So basically what he's saying is, don't view level design and creating your level as there's this magical art to level design. There's some principles, there's some philosophies, there's some techniques, but it is design where we start with an intention. We have tools that we can draw upon to provide that for a player, and we're giving them an experience. So that's what we're going to talk about now, a little bit of that. And I'm going to show you the experience that I'm creating in my prototype level. And when I call it prototype level, it's a level that allows us to go from A to B, and within that, test out the combat mechanics that are important for this stage of the game. If we only had just here's our player and here's an enemy, let's fight, then we're not really testing out the mechanics of an RPG, are we? That's like a Street Fighter game. We're not making Street Fighter. So we need some level flow so that we can see what it feels like to be running along, hit an enemy, running along, attack that enemy, running along, shoot. You know, our health is going down. We need a little bit of that so that we can make the right sort of combat that fits within the proper context. When we start figuring out our level, start designing our level, we need to take into consideration a couple of things. And these are to do with the intention of the level. So you don't just slap it together and say, that'll be fine. You need to have an intention. What's our purpose? And we've been going through this in our one-page GDD. We need to take into consideration our theme, specifically for the level, the experience for the level, and the design pillar that is going to be throughout our game, and how do we execute that. So these are the things in a prototype level, because we're still at the point of saying we need to be prototyping our mechanics. We need to have a level that supports that. We need to have something that supports the theme, that supports the player experience, and supports the design pillar. So in my game, the theme is to do with persistence, so not giving up, and the experience is looking for funny and comedic and trying to make people laugh, and the design pillar is absurd situations. Absurd situations. And you're going to have your own, and as with anything, you can follow along and just do exactly the same as we're doing. That's a great way to practice, but we'd love for you to go and modify each of these so that you've got your own particular flavor of RPG that you're making. So these are the intentions we need to take into consideration. And then we also have some requirements. I haven't given myself a lot of room here, but we have requirements. Requirements, things that we've just got to get in this level because we are trying to prototype stuff. And let's have a look at the requirements. So for me, I see that we need multiple enemies, multiple enemy types. I don't want to just have one enemy. I want to, at this stage, have a way to fight a big enemy, a small enemy, a fast enemy, an enemy with lots of hit points, etc. I'd like to have the requirement that the player has to heal. So at some point, your health goes down so much that you're like, oh, goodness me, I have to heal or else I'm in big trouble. And I want some sort of going from A to B flow. That's part of my requirement. I want the player to start at a point and then have to reach a point, as opposed to just being in an arena. You might be making an arena brawler, which is fine. You wouldn't have A to B flow the way I do here. And obviously, I'm looking to create some degree of challenge. I don't want this to be easy. I want the player to, when they're going from A to B, to nearly die, to nearly not make it, to have to be clever in how they do it, to actually have to use their whatever skills we've given them at this point. I want to test out how ranged works. And I also want to make sure that the camera is in the right placement, so test the camera so that I can get my geometry. And that's also a point here is decision on assets. So I can make decisions to do with, is this building the right height? How far back do I have things? How much spacing do I do? I'm going to put that as an extra one. Spacing and distances. Okay, now by writing this out, it's giving me a whole lot of input and structure and guidance on what sort of level I could create, that I want most of our art style to be in outdoorsy rather than making it a dungeon crawler type game for our game. So village, and so I was using this, I wanted to make sure that I had an opportunity to have tough battles, so you had to keep going and not give up. I wanted to have some absurdity in there, and I wanted to have it funny, and these were my requirements. So the first thing I did when looking at how I should construct my level and where it should be located and the theme of it was I went to my art direction concept document and just picked out some of the things that I liked and were inspiring me. So this village scene with houses, a bridge, some sort of central fountain, maybe with pigs rolling around in them, that would be great. This smallish kind of old busted castle, I wanted to get that in there somehow because I really like it, inspired by it. So I went there and had a look at that. Then I also jumped onto Google Images and just medieval village. I really like the idea of having a central spot in my level that, like a village green, if you guys are familiar with that terminology, it's like the green area where the villagers came and hung out back in the olden days. So I wanted to create that feeling of there's a central spot and it's in the middle of the level. And I also found an image that I really liked where we were up high from a camera perspective and looking down onto the village, because I wanted to try playing around with my camera to make sure my camera was able to give the player a view of what was happening down below. I think that would be really neat. And also to give them a precursor or a view of what's going to happen in the level, so something that's going to happen to come. So these were the elements I was working with. This start at the top and go down into the middle, have a central village green type feel, and to have all those villages and houses and huts and all that kind of peasantry stuff going on. So when I sketched out my level, I just started sketching. I started with, here's the village green. Let me make notes on this as we go. Here's the village green right at the start. I want that to be a fairly central place. I've just put some crosses in here. This is a way of me denoting, you know what, we'll have some fight in here. And when you're creating your level, you don't need to go into super detail of saying exactly where is the enemy, because you go in and place that in the engine, and we're going to start doing all that really soon, doing this in Unity. But I'm doing a general layout, so I'm not completely in Unity scratching my head thinking, what's going on here? I wanted to say this is where the player started, up at the top of the mountain, somewhere-ish. I wanted to say right near the very start, we'll give them a quest giver. And using our prototyping philosophy, I've come up with a way to kind of cheat that at the moment without creating a full questing system, just to trigger some audio to say, you know, hey, here's what I want you to do. And then as we progress through the level, you come down this dirt road here. Let me just paint in. You come down the dirt road, like that image that I was showing you. Some sort of blockage here. I think that would be interesting to break up the flow. The player jumps down onto here, and then you've got a little bit of freedom. Where do I go? What do I do? That they can run around a little bit around the green, have some combat, like I said, in the middle here. And then after they've met what they need to meet in there, they hopefully at this point have seen that they can go left or right. And ultimately, I want them to end up going right so that we can have a boss fight on the castle. I wasn't sure when I first created this, did I want the player to be able to head out of town this way? Let me make that a bit smaller. Did I want them to be able to actually go out there and that was a different way to go, or did I want to have this blocked? So I wasn't sure about that, but I was sure that I wanted to have the river going past to give it a nice kind of flavor that this is blocked on that side. And we've talked about having rivers and bridges and stuff, and that gave us an opportunity to have a bridge down in this part as well that I think would be nice to go over a bridge. And then tons of trees. Tons of trees just scattered around because I like trees and I like to have things nice and green. So I wanted to do that. Green around here, green over this side. You probably won't see that as a player with our camera, so just be mindful of what you can and can't see. But trees there, probably some trees around here as well. Have it nice and green, and then just a bunch of houses. So this is also going to inform what we need in terms of our assets. So we need houses, and for now we can just, I'll show you how to just block out some placeholder kind of stuff. Houses, trees, probably a castle at the end, bit of river action. So that was the entirety. And if we look at the intention of this, it was about creating funny and absurd. So I haven't necessarily got that yet, but what I've done is created a place where funny and absurd can happen. So some sort of funny, absurd intro up here, and then here's a moment of funny, absurd, what's going to go on. And then particularly down in here, we have the centerpiece of there's going to be something going on down there. And at the moment, I'm thinking in terms of something weird happening with the animals. This is a very farmy kind of setup. There might be plots of crops in here, or this might be farmland up the back here as well. So some farm stuff going on. And village greens tended to be, back in the day, it's where people let their sheep roam and to eat the grass and to hang out there. So I think, I think that's what they did back in the day at the village green. Was where there were animals. So I'm thinking something weird going on with the animals. Maybe a wizard has come along and cast a spell in a weird, funny, stupid kind of way where the animals are doing something odd. Maybe they're all walking around and they've taken over, and you have to go and subdue the animals. And this, if it's somewhat near the start of the game, then perhaps you have to fight pigs and goats and as opposed to huge big monsters and demons, because our guy is starting off a little bit underpowered. So that's how I went through my level process. And like I said, when I was showing you the Jesse Shell book, it really is, level design is just using the tools that you've got and creating a good experience and following some simple rules in terms of widths and distances, which we're about to find out when we start prototyping our level. So that brings me to the challenge for you guys. And for your challenge in this video, I would like you to sketch out your prototype. First of all, starting by writing down your intention, and then sketching your level as I've done, just a piece of paper. You can do it, if you've got a stylus, you can do it straight onto your computer, that's cool, but sketch it out, paper and pencil is fine as well. And then post an image of your level sketch to the discussions for us to look at. Write a little bit of a blurb if you like. If you want to write some details against it, that's great, you don't have to. But to show us your sketch, that'd be excellent. Because in the next video, we're jumping into Unity and we're going to start building your prototype level in Unity.